Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how we can multiply integers. So there's two sets of problems we could have for this when we have integers that have the same sign or when we have integers that have different signs. So maybe one number is positive and one number is negative. So when we have numbers that have the same sign, our product or the answer to our multiplication problem is going to be a positive number. So if I have a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative, that's going to give me a positive answer. And we'll talk about why in just a second. Then when we have different signs, we're going to end up with a negative product. So if I have a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive, we'll have a negative answer. So to illustrate why this happens, let's look over here at this example we have. So if I did 4 and we have times the quantity of -3 plus 6, if we multiplied this by simplifying what's inside the parentheses first, we would do 4 and then we would have -3 plus 6, which would give us a 3, and we know that 4 times 3 is equal to 12, right? So follow with me here. Now instead of doing the addition first, we could use the distributive property and multiply 4 times -3 and then add 4 times 6. Well, let's leave 4 times 3 for right now because let's assume we don't know if this should be positive or negative. Well, so we'll just give it a variable. Let's call it x. Well, we do know that 4 plus 6 is 24, and we know that the entire problem is supposed to equal 12, right? So now we could solve this and think, okay, well, what plus 12 would equal, or excuse me, what number plus 24 would equal 12? Well, if we move this 24 over to the other side, we would have x is equal to 12 minus 24. Well, now we're subtracting integers. We could write that as an addition problem, 12 plus -24. Now we're adding and our signs are different. We've done videos on this before. We need to subtract the absolute values and keep the sign of the larger number. So in this case, x would be -12, okay? So now that tells us that when we multiply a positive times a negative, we're gonna end up with a negative answer, okay? So let's use those two different rules, same sign, multiply, we get positive, different sign, multiply, we get negative, to solve 6 problems here. So for number 1, we have 8 times 8. Well, this is a positive times a positive, and 8 times 8 is just 64, and that would be positive 64. Number 2, we have -1 times -10. Well, that's a negative times a negative, so we know our answer should be positive, and 1 times 10 would be 10. Number 3, -6 times -9. So it's exactly the same as far as the same signs on number 2, but it's just written a little bit differently. Remember, this dot right here just means multiply. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and 9 times 6 would be 54. Number 4, we have 11 times -3. So now we have different signs. So we know our answer should be negative, and 11 times 3 would be 33. So now that one would be -33. Number 5, we also have a positive times a negative, so our answer will be negative, and 5 times 7 is 35. And the last one, we have -38 times 0. Well, we didn't talk about what do we do when we multiply by 0. Well, multiplying by 0 always results in 0. Okay, so there is no positive or negative 0 there, so 0 would be our final answer for number 6. And that is how we can multiply integers.